Please note this episode discusses mature themes. While not explicit, listener discretion is advised. Jenny Gnirke is a seasoned reality television producer with over 15 years of experience in crafting authentic narratives. Known for her pivotal roles in groundbreaking shows like MTV's 16 and Pregnant and Teen Mom, she has consistently pushed the boundaries of reality TV with series like TLC's Extreme Sisters and Roku's Match Me in Miami. As the showrunner for the reboot of ID Channel's Disappeared, Jenny has made a significant impact in both post-production and fieldwork, working closely with families of missing persons. She believes in the transformative power of storytelling, using these narratives to foster healing and empathy for both participants and audiences. This is True Crime in Hollywood, Jenny's personal tale. All right, so today I am sitting down with Jenny, and Jenny and I met not too long ago, but one of the things that connected us was finding out that you worked on Disappeared. But before we get there, I would like to go back to kind of the beginning for you. So where did you grow up and what interested you about true crime as a whole?
Oh gosh, this is a long expanding question.
That's totally fine.
I grew up mostly in Sarasota, Florida. Yeah, Florida, where a lot of true crime just naturally happens.
Yes.
As well. That's not necessarily what I was driven towards. And I always wanted to be a screenwriter. I always wanted to work in the industry. I always wanted to make television, film, whatever. I grew up, with a single mom living in an apartment. So I was not, given access to like amazing cameras and amazing equipment. I was just had dreams sort of.
Yeah.
Ended up getting into the School of Visual Arts on a scholarship. And when I moved to New York City to go to school, film school, I was like, my head was spinning because everybody felt so far ahead of me. But it's ironic because growing up, especially in my teen years, reality TV started becoming really big. So I loved watching, all the trashy VH1 shows like the Flava Flav show. I loved
those were the
Laguna.
best.
I know. So like me and my mom just used to watch all those like trashy shows. So, and then I loved X-Files. Like I loved like all kinds of different things. And then I get landed into art school where everyone's talking about David Aronofsky and whatever else art film that I was like, was so out of my depth. And so ironically, I graduate film school and get all my fancy creds together. And I needed a job like desperately right out of college. So I just started calling every production company that I could find. I had this book that some professor had told me to buy, which was like listed every production company. So anyone that was in New York, I just started calling. And the only one that offered me any kind of position was Left Right in New York City. They do now documentary and reality shows. They do a wide mix of things. They were a much smaller company then. And they were like, yeah, we're stocking up. We're looking for people for the show. You could be a production assistant. And it was, I want to work for Diddy season 2. Your eyes.
Jenny.
So
I was not expecting that.
This is going to go in different directions than what we'd even talked about. But so my first job out of college, which was in 2009, was working on Puff Daddy's show. And I worked at the Bad Boy offices, and I was actually in charge of talent, which was like a very prestigious like first PA job. I don't know how I landed it, to be honest. And I know there was like more experienced PAs who were like driving and stuff, and they're like, how did you get this job? And I was like, I don't know, I just go in and try to be nice, and somehow I get things. So I was with the cast the whole time, and I got to be very close with like the producers, and there was just like an amazing like Black female producers on that show who really like mentored me and was like willing to like let me be in part of conversations that I had no being part of because I was just so that was kind of wild. And side note, I know because everyone's thinking Puff Daddy, this whole crazy lawsuit and all the stuff that's going on now. I have dived not that into it, but I believe the lawsuit started in 2008, and I was like, oh my gosh, I worked for him the year after that. That's so
Oh my
weird.
goodness.
And all
Wow.
I'll say about that is like I didn't see anything obviously worth like mentioning. He was on
Right.
set very, very rarely, but I will
Sure.
say I understand like the culture around him and the allure around him, because the way it was operated on set was very much like if Diddy shows up, like everybody like has to just, we have to just do whatever's going on, like everything stops. And
Right.
so it definitely, just being in that celebrity culture, even like being in reality TV, you could see how there's just so much power that these people get very
Right.
like
Yeah.
easily. So it was definitely a wild like first job. And then I worked in post for a while. I jumped around a lot. And then my first job that was really story driven was working on Teen Mom, which had
Wow.
been on for a few years at that point, but I think it had been season 4 or 5 I joined, which also has so many legal implications too, and things that have
Yes.
happened over the years. But it was really refreshing to work on a show where it really was a small team, and it
Mm.
really was these women's like real lives and their real experiences. um I also worked on 60 and Pregnant. That shows a little bit of a different format, because it's following, each episode is its own girl's story getting
Right.
pregnant as a teenager, and it's right before the birth and then right after the birth. And for me, like having grown up in Florida, like grown up like lower class, like I understood where these girls came from, and it to me
Yeah.
like I hadn't seen like their stories on television. So it was like very
Right.
powerful to me, and I was just like honored to be part of it, honestly.
Wow.
And it was very feminist driven. And I'm like I'm
Mhm.
proud to be a feminist, and like to me that female focus, and having gone to film school and like consider that path, I'm so like lucky that I fell into reality TV, because so quickly I was given so many opportunities. And just to like see, especially at the height of Teen Mom, I mean, we were getting like 6 million viewers. Like
I
it's
was one of
great.
those 6 million viewers. I mean, I watched it religiously when it first came out for years, actually. Yeah. So I was one of
Yeah.
those.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, like, so I was just honored to be able to make something and then, 3 months later see it on TV and everybody be talking about it. It's like,
Yeah.
nobody else I went to film school with had that like immediate, feeling of like my work is out there and it's like
Hmm.
important. And like, again, because I worked in such a small team, there was so many chances where like an editor was like, come in and work on this with me. And like,
Right.
that's why I do think that reality TV is a great stepping stone for anyone who wants to do like any creative work, because you can always
Yeah.
do your masterpiece film at some point, but reality TV is like boot camp for filmmaking. You will learn
You're not
everything
wrong. Yeah.
so fast. So then yeah, so I have been jumping around, did a lot of different shows. I worked on Hotel Impossible for many years, which is a really fun show, which each episode covered a different hotel and each story was crazier than the next. But yeah, how I ended up in true crime was I had a mentor who was amazing, Lori Layton. She's been a showrunner on a lot of true crime shows. She also was an exec at Atlas Media. And even though I hadn't really been in this true crime space, which can be very niche in a sense,
Right.
when you
Yes.
with yeah, like having worked in true crime, it's like a lot of journalist backgrounds,
Hmm.
a lot of people who, have done numerous shows. So to me, making that pivot was never going to be like easy. And
Yeah.
so having someone like Lori believe in me and being like, I know that you know story. I know that you can do this. I would have never been able to make that jump if not for her. And I think also I tried to bring just an authenticity and be like, okay, let's question how things have always been done, because maybe there's
Mm.
a new way. And I do think true crime is evolving, especially with streaming involved, the documentaries, documentary filmmaking, makers
Yes.
like coming in. So yeah, that's kind of like how I ended up on Disappeared. Long
Wow.
story.
No, it's incredible though. I mean, if you really think about it. But I think one of the things I would love to ask you, because something, again, as a viewer of Teen Mom and 16 and Pregnant, one of the most prevalent things to me that I think drew me in was the trauma factor, that there is trauma. So how do like a show like that to true crime can coexist with each other? Like what are those similarities?
I maybe also because I did come from a film school background, you know, my approach or the way I had learned this kind of documentary television was really that it was their story and you're viewing it.
Right.
So, and this is tricky, especially when you get to, more cast driven shows like a Housewives or something, right?
Hmm.
But for the most part, like you are a viewer into this person's life. You are a vehicle to tell their story. So to me, is very difficult when you're dealing with footage that involve children or, any
Hmm.
kind of crime, like in general.
Correct.
Um, and I think there's a lot of talk, and I know you're involved in that, ethical, standards, which
Hmm.
I think is really important to have those conversations just industry wide. But for me, I think the ethical piece of it, I have to have that instinctually
Mm.
because there's so many situations you're going to find yourself in. I mean, I've done a lot of my career in post production, but I, have worked closely with field producers, people who work in the fields, and there's so many situations that come up that you can't prepare for.
Yeah.
And, when you're talking about like real documentary filmmakers who are like in Afghanistan dealing with a war zone or, dealing with the cartels in Mexico, like, and bullets are flying at you, like, you're not thinking from a logical place in your mind. You're going into
Correct.
fight
Yeah.
and flight lizard brain. So I do think learning early in my career that I have to have my own set of morals of how I'm going to approach any storytelling experience
Mm.
helps me to not have to think about it so much. Like I
Right.
have to sleep at the end of the night. And I talk about this with other people like I've worked with too, and they all have their own sort of moral center. I have a friend who's like she's an amazing field producer and she's like I have to think this is fair. This is fair for them and fair for me. And as long as it's fair, and they know and I know and there's a fairness to it, then like I can be okay with whatever happens. And
Right.
I mean, that's changing with the savviness of the cast members that come on to any show or even watch true crime and know what they're sort of getting into. Um, but it's a difficult balance for sure.
Yeah. So with that, how did you know that that was the job for you then? By the point of segueing into true crime, you did these other shows. What stuck out to you?
I don't see a huge difference, to be honest. And I actually think that may be part of what's limiting us in this industry in some ways. Like
Yeah.
to me, I go by authentic storytelling, whether that's teen mom, true crime, basketball wives. Like I
Yeah.
watch whatever, okay, like on a housewives show, you're putting five women together to have dinner and then they
Yeah.
have a conversation that may or may not be attached to other thing that's happening. But when a woman says to another woman some statement about her hair or husband or whatever and it triggers her and they have some kind of argument, for the most part that's a real moment, like that's a real
Yeah.
situation. There's
Correct.
something really happening in that person that's like receiving this in a different way than you or I would receive it. And to
Right.
me, I just think of the psychology of these different interactions, and in a way we're almost like reality TV, documentary TV, true crime is a Truman show of our existence as humans, I feel like. So I
Mm.
always try to respect like the the real stuff that's happening or the real situations I'm watching and take it in without a lot of judgment and just try to put myself in that position without bias or give the person like the opportunity to tell their story in the most authentic way. And I don't really think about the genre that it's in because I
Yeah.
think that's what audiences want to watch. What I think I loved about Disappeared is just that it covers missing persons cases. And I don't need a conclusive ending to true crime for me. Like
Hmm.
I think the concept of bringing back Disappeared after the Gabby Petito case really showed that the audience plays a part in solving a lot of these missing persons cases. So I don't think it's like the family, the law enforcement. It's like now it's the family, the law enforcement, and the public
Yeah.
coming together to fix these things or solve these cases or get answers for the families. And to me, I just think out of all of the families that we've covered on Disappeared, I think any of them could have been me, or it could have been
Mm.
somebody I know. And I think hearing people say that to me, be like, I never thought it would happen to me. I mean, I had family members say I was a huge fan of Disappeared. I watched Disappeared for years. And then when it happened to me, I never thought a producer from Disappeared would be calling me. Like that's
Mm.
how long running the show was. So I felt it was a legacy that I wanted to uphold, and it meant a lot to me. But yeah, I mean, that's kind of how I think about true crime. I try not to put it in this box.
Yeah, I like that though. That's a great answer. I mean, you kind of touched on this, but what do you think was contributed to the long success of Disappeared and then having that come back, as you said, after the Petito case? Like, what do you think it is for audiences that are, wanting this type of content, especially when there isn't necessarily a resolution at the end of it?
Yeah, I mean, it's similar to me to Unsolved Mysteries. I was a huge Unsolved Mysteries fan when I was a kid.
Same
I would
here.
I would skip school and watch Unsolved Mysteries. I think
Oh,
like 90% of middle school was me not going and me staying home and watching
yeah,
Unsolved Mysteries. Um
truly.
yeah. So and Disappeared sort of has that legacy as well. As far as just being long running, sort of some of the style choices. I think that the audience, a certain type of audience, doesn't need an answer. They want
Mm,
to make their own conclusions, but I think that's just the filmmaking answer, right?
yeah, yeah,
But the real deeper reason I think is that for an audience, they want to help these people. And I think these people, the families that come on and talk about their loved one and the situation that they found themselves, they're really looking for answers. They're really looking for help.
yeah,
And the challenging piece of that is, for me as a producer, there's so many factors in each case that you can't say this is important or not important. And
right,
I think for an audience, sometimes that can be challenging because they want that easy answer.
right,
And you don't know if like the missing person loved music and there was a
right,
sighting in a record store. That could be really important. So
yeah,
you have to look at these people as three-dimensional. And I also think for the families, just being willing to really talk about different struggles that their loved one went through, or things that maybe they wouldn't want to say on camera, but is important to find the person that they love, is a very
right,
vulnerable place. And for an audience, I think I personally like to live in a gray area. I like to see the depths of different situations and the nuances.
yeah,
I think as a society, we're probably moving more to a black and white situation
yeah,
because you see it on social media, you see it everywhere. Everybody wants just a clear answer.
yeah,
So I think Disappeared fits in that there's no clear answer, but we're all searching.
hmm,
And yeah, I mean, I think the legacy of the show is really getting these victims' stories out there, their faces out there, where audience can contact.
yeah,
Um, and the tips are invaluable, especially if a
right,
case has been cold for like 5 years. That could change everything.
yeah.
Um,
Wow. And yeah, you're hitting on so many important notes. Now, one of the things though, what I talk about sometimes in my workshop is putting on the producer hat, person hat, like human hat. How has that shaped you in your career? Because I know for myself, sometimes I have to like remove my emotions or something, from sitting down with somebody in a pre-interview maybe. How does that affect you as a person, but also as a producer?
Oh, it's such a good question. Unfortunately, my answer might not be that good. I was gonna say, I'm a Virgo. So I don't know if I'm like the most emotional person to answer this
Yeah.
question. I feel like I can balance that emotional piece with the um logical piece in some
Yes.
ways.
Yeah.
But it's very difficult. And I work closely. I had an amazing field producer, Janine leads on Disappeared, and she's very empathetic, very great connecting with people. So yeah, it's really hard to be in these situations and have to ask hard questions.
Hmm.
Just like a random example is, you're interviewing someone and somebody else is accusing them of killing someone, even like that
Right.
happens, right? And
Right.
legally, if someone's going to say that on camera, you have to ask that question.
Right.
And that's like scary, right?
Yeah. Yeah, it is scary. It is. Yeah.
And I
That's
mean,
not
we need support in order to even be in that situation, right?
correct. Hmm.
And there is a lot of risks when it comes to this kind of storytelling. And I think we're just now starting to have the conversation of, because when I came up, it was like renegade. It was
I
like,
call it the Wild West, and I keep, like I say that, and I'm like, I feel like I'm a broken record, but it's true. It is so
yeah,
true.
yeah. I mean, the stories I could tell you even from my first job
Oh, I
would take
believe
up
it.
10 podcasts, but like we weren't union. We're
Yeah.
most of unscripted is still
It's not union.
not
Yep.
union.
Hmm.
So
Hmm.
there's a lot we could dive into here, but as far as like my emotions or me personally, I don't really try to separate producer hat from who I really am.
Mm.
And I don't think that works for everyone.
Yeah.
I just think I try to think I'm not showing up the same way I show up to a bar hanging out with my friends. I'm at work
Correct.
and I'm
Yeah.
working and I'm being professional, but I'm still being me. Like my
Yeah.
job has taken over so much of my life. Spent
Yeah.
more hours working than I have doing anything else in my
Yeah.
life. So it's just hard for me to imagine that I would be some other different person or put on different hats like that. And not saying that other people don't and that works for them. But I try to just approach it from the same place as I do. I actually find a lot of the times, no matter what show I'm working on or regardless, people want to talk and they want to tell their
Hmm.
story. So
Hmm.
I actually try to say as little as possible. I'm a talker. I love to talk, but I'm happy to just be like, I like to ask questions. All my friends are always like, you are the person who asks a million questions. And I think because my mom was that way as well,
Yeah.
she always asked a million questions. So I think I was just raised that way to be curious and ask things. And so I never felt it was unnatural. And I actually think that this is why I actually went to school for screenwriting. And then I quickly realized me sitting at a desk by myself writing was depressive state for
Yeah. I
me.
mean, it's true. Yeah. I
So
believe it.
reality TV really fit in, and true crime and unscripted, all of the genres really fit in with something that I could do a lot of writing,
Hmm.
a lot of psychology, a lot of, crafting different stories and asking people questions and being a vehicle and a vessel for their stories. So it's kind of how I approach it. There's definitely an end of the day cry every once in a while.
Yeah. I
I think
believe it.
I've learned in my career though, because I've been, this industry is really, really tough. I've been taken advantage of just like anybody else.
Yeah.
And I've really realized, especially even now when the industry is in such a big downturn,
Hmm.
that you have to do what's authentic and real for you. And as long as you're pursuing that and you're true to that, the right opportunities will come your way, the right situations will come your way, the right people will come your way. But holding that boundary is really hard. But the
hard.
more, so hard, but the more you do it, the more it becomes like natural.
Exactly. Yeah. It's like second nature at that point. But that's such a great response. Like, I'm actually really happy that you said that. And it is so true. I want to go back just a little bit, though. You just said that sometimes at the end of your day, you do have a good cry. I think that's something that as true crime producers, we we kind of leave that out because I feel like I have never really had that type of conversation to say, I take this work home with like really some of my showrunners, ones that like are have turned into mentors. But I would say for the most part, like that's not really something that we talk about because you get into work mode and it is go, go, go in production. And then allowing yourself to actually take a moment and process it. I mean, am I correct? That's what you're doing? Is that like you're processing it, or is it just kind of like the overwhelming feeling of hearing these stories? Like, what is that like for you?
I think a lot, especially early in my career, a lot of insecurity. And even
Mhm.
working in true crime, you know, a lot of people work in true crime, law enforcement background, journalist background, dedicated their life to solving crimes. I worked on Teen Mom and
Yeah.
Maid.
Yeah.
Like I made my career by just throwing myself into it and doing it. So there's so many times where I'm like, I don't feel like I'm qualified. Like I don't know that I
Mm,
have the skills. I don't know that I can do it. And the only way that I can cope with that is really saying, this isn't about me. I have to take my ego out of it, which for the entertainment business, you won't hear a lot of people say. But I do. And then also I'm going to fail. I'm going to make so many mistakes and that's
yeah.
okay. And that's only going to make me grow and be stronger. So I think that's always a piece of it, a piece that I don't think women are always like so open to talking about because we have to
Hmm.
just appear at work like we can do 20 jobs and not
Hmm.
complain and be amazing all the time. But like at the end of the day, sometimes I'm like, I don't know what the F I'm doing.
Yeah. Agreed.
um, as far as like, taking on the trauma, I think a lot of it honestly is the kind of trauma that it triggers back in you. And
Mm,
for me, like all I can do is like continue to work on, my own childhood trauma, whatever I bring to the table. Because when you're triggered by something, it's okay to be triggered by something, but
yes.
you have to sit in that and you do have to process it because otherwise it's gonna fester.
Hmm.
Um, and then for me, honestly, some of the stories that I hear and the people that I talk to, at the end of the day, like when I go on a hike or I go walk on the beach, I'm like, my life is amazing.
Yeah.
I take a lot of it in and really have gratitude for where I am because I can have empathy and I can also say, I get to hang up this call. I get to walk away from this. Like this
Hmm.
is their life.
Hmm.
So I have to also take a beat and say like my life is great. And it is very hard to be grateful when you're in the thick of working 20-hour days and you're not sleeping and
Right.
da, da, da.
Yeah.
So finding that balance, and I mean hopefully we will all have more of that balance in this industry,
One can only
isn't
hope.
we keep praying. So um yeah, I mean I think that's important, but yeah, I think also as a leader when you're working with a team, you have to be a very strong support for everyone under you, and that's really important to me. And I
Mm,
think you mentioned you don't have a lot of showrunners who like will admit to that. And you
yeah.
know why? Because I do think as a leader, you have to be there for everyone under you. And then you have to have someone that you can turn to and like, whether it's your partner, whether it's your friends, where it's your therapist, whether it's all those people in a team of about 10 other people, like
Yeah.
whoever it is, because it is really hard when you're expecting someone to do a lot of work and you're not standing as a leader on your own to be like, I can handle this. Like I can take this. I can complain up, but like don't
Hmm.
complain down. Because I always think, okay, well, this person's early in their career or they're growing or they're learning, and I have to be the mentor that I had, and I can't
Right.
dump on them. Although we all do, like, because we're all human, but that's something I strive for. And what I look for in other showrunners is really like someone who handles their stuff, but is honest. Like, today I'm having a bad day. And I think that's fine. I think it's fine to have a bad day. I think it's fine to be honest about your feelings, but it's also like, you know, you can't dump everything on your team either. And that is like a very strong leadership skill that I have worked on as I've like grown in this industry, and it's hard. So sometimes at the end of the day, you just cry because you just need to let it out.
Yeah, agreed. Oh, I love that answer. Why do you believe ethics, though, are essential to true crime storytelling?
That's a hard question, because we in the industry can have that conversation, right?
Yes.
Even like you and me as producers, even say go above our heads, even go to company owners, even say network owners, even say streamer owners. Now there's like 5 of them because they're all merging.
Exactly.
By the end of this year, there'll be like 5 people who own the entire industry.
Yeah, exactly.
I think the piece that is missing for me, actually, the more I've been thinking about it, is the audience, because the audience plays a huge part in this as well. And as much as we can criticize, you know, anyone in the industry, this is a business. There is, you know, an element of making money that has to be realistic here, right? Although there's a lot of nonprofits, there's PBS, there's lots of other sources that make really great programming that doesn't necessarily require capital to be the main part of it. But for an audience, you know, they have a responsibility as well of what are you watching? What do you demand? Like, how much drama do you like? Even look at our current political climate, like anything. It's just, it has to be so extreme to even get a like on Instagram, any kind of follow. Especially compared to if you watch Real Housewives of Orange County first season and the season now, like it's such a different show. Like first season was just women with their kids basically. And now it's like who threw what at a table.
Yeah.
And I think the same is true in true crime, is like, you know, unsolved mysteries, original unsolved mysteries. And now we're looking at the real salacious Netflix docs, or has to be some kind of insane turn that you have to go to work tomorrow and can't stop talking about. It has to be someone sharing like a really, you know, dark sexual assault and like the exact details of it to really be catching someone's attention. And for me, that is a struggle that, you know, it isn't going to be fixed unless we have a real conversation about it. I mean, even working on Disappeared, you know, the public plays a huge role in getting answers for a lot of these missing persons cases. But at the same time, there's a now like a huge market of people who make TikToks, YouTubes, post on every social media, will go to the ends of the earth to find whatever you know, information, which leads to, you know, a lot of these families deal with scammers,
Exactly.
which is terrible. So compounding their trauma and their tragedy is now someone trying to, you know, take money from them. And, you know, a lot of criticism that I feel like is unfounded. I mean, if I went missing tomorrow, I don't think my dad could tell you what I did in the last month, let alone the last 3 days. Like adult people don't tell everyone in their lives everything they do. And that doesn't mean anything really. But, you know, but I understand the desire to want answers and to figure it out in order to, you know, find out the reason for things. But it's definitely started to become, and in the same sense as a snake eating its own tail, it's like we have these true crime stories that blow up and everybody online is talking about it. And then Netflix makes a documentary about the people online who won't stop talking about it.
We've seen that.
Hotel Cecile is like a great example of that.
Very good example. Yeah, exactly.
So, and I mean, it's just going to keep going. I mean, it's an interesting examination. Like, why are we so like desperate and fervent for these like stories? But at the same time, like, there are there's three entities involved, right?
Yeah.
in talking about this. So, but yeah, I do think ethical storytelling is really important. I try to just have that moral center.
Yeah.
Um,
I love
but
this answer though, by the
yeah,
way. Because I saw your face when I asked it. And I'm like, you're doing great.
I feel like I'm taking all your questions and taking a left turn. And then
No.
and then at the end, I'm like, wait, did I answer her question?
No, that's amazing. So you kind of have touched on this, but I would love to ask it more in a broader sense. But how do you envision the evolution of true crime in Hollywood, particularly for producers handling such sensitive stories involving trauma? So with, like you're touching on so many important things, like we're talking about the social media aspect where, there are people, because anybody can grab a mic and start talking about a case or, record themselves. So how do you see that process kind of evolving over the next course of, the next year, 2 years? How do you see that coming about?
I'm developing my own true crime documentaries right now as a freelancer. It's been so rewarding. I've learned so much. And I think what I've learned the most is being true and authentic to myself in the stories that resonate for me,
Yeah.
because it's so easy to fall into a hole of this is the hottest story on TikTok, this is the hottest story on Facebook. And like you said, it's the wild west of 100
Mhm.
producers competing for the same family members that are traumatized.
Yes.
And to me, I started realizing that that rat race wasn't authentic to me. And I guess that goes back to your ethics question too, is like, I do think this industry and storytelling in general really challenges you to know yourself better.
Mm,
And I think that goes back to me of like just trying to have a moral center, because it's so easy to get lost in trying to advance your career or trying to, you know, get the hottest story, that it's so easy to fall into a hole and not recognize yourself anymore. And I just
yeah.
never want to be in that place. And I think as far as how things are going to be with telling these stories in 10 years, I can't answer that question. I don't even know where we'll be as like a television industry. I
That's
try
fair.
to I try to think of things as like the forest from the trees type of thing.
Yeah.
And you almost asked me a question about one patch of the forest, and I'm like, I don't even know how to answer that because I'm still trying to figure out what the forest looks like. I don't know. I think there's some really great YouTubers out there that are doing great work. John Larden is one that I have spoken to, and we've connected quite a bit. Um, and you know, what I love about at least his work is he really connects with the families. He really builds a relationship that's really important to him. And I think he believes that he has a purpose in telling the stories and
Mm,
not just sensationalizing them.
right.
Um, I think most people in this space are well intentioned, but it is wild right now. Well, and I can't fault them because, the creative arts is becoming open to anyone. And you can make a significant amount of money on a YouTube series or a TikTok series. And these people are building their businesses from nothing.
Hmm.
So I think about how reality TV started, and, we did some crazy stuff too.
Yeah. Exactly. And that falls back into like the evolution, but I think it's a good point because we are seeing that structure kind of playing out. I mean, I know you gave the example of like Real Housewives, with moms and their kids, but to what it is today, but I think that is so important to kind of look at those parallels because you're right. Anybody can just build this from the bottom up on their social media and talking about those things. I'm going to give you easier questions. I promise. But
You're making me think, though. I
well, I'm
like
glad.
it.
That's good to hear. What do you find most rewarding then about your job? And then what is also the biggest challenge doing this job?
Okay, that's like an emotional question. I might cry.
That's okay.
You
That's
pivoted the
okay.
hard to making me cry. Um, no, so I think the thing that I love most about my job is like always think like back of like, a little girl growing up in Nowheresville, Florida, like in a 2-bedroom
Yeah.
apartment. Like the fact that I live in Los Angeles, I work in the industry, I make television shows that anyone can watch, everyone watches, ends up on different blogs, people on Twitter tweet about it, people care. Like it just feels like a dream come true. And anytime I'm frustrated or I feel like, oh, my career is sliding backwards or not doing what I want, which is so often, when you're freelance in this industry and jumping from show to show,
Mhm.
I think, you know what, even just to have the opportunity to do this is really meaningful. And I think everybody's stories deserve to be told. And I think with true crime specifically, what is so powerful about it is so many people have experienced a crime. And I think being able to tell your story is cathartic. And I also think it's cathartic for the audience to hear that story and see themselves in the story. And something I learned even in screenwriting was about specificity, like whatever your character is going through, be as specific as possible. And what's great about true crime is like there is no character to write. There's no fake story
Mm.
to concoct. Like this is someone's real trauma, real life. And I mean, even growing up, like I was shocked, like freshman year of college, when I was at a party with a bunch of girls and we all just happened to be around and they all started telling me like their first sexual assault. And I was shocked because nothing had ever, thank God, happened like that to me, although other members of my family and friends has happened to. I was really shocked to hear the prevalence of such a horrible crime and just talked about so casually in a way. And that's when I really realized that there's so many things that are unspoken in our society, and the toxicity of that, the shame, the separateness, oh well, was it really rape because it wasn't reported to law enforcement, rape culture. I mean, all of that is still so shrouded and not safe to talk about. And what I love about true crime, I think one of the most amazing films this year was American Nightmare. And I just loved the way that the story ended with the first police officer to take the case really seriously and solve it was a female police officer.
Yeah.
And I think when we talk about law enforcement, it's so easy to be like, oh, they're biased, they're biased. They've done studies and they have actually seen that law enforcement is less biased than the American public. So
Yeah.
we're all so biased, and there's so many stories that we just don't shine a light on it. I mean, and so I think true crime is at its best when it is shining a light on those stories and is telling those stories. I wish the audience wouldn't expect so much from it.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that's a great answer. And you are absolutely right. Everything you just said just resonated because I just shared my story for the very first time on the podcast this week and talking about my sexual assault on campus. So by you saying that, it is so true. Like it is, kind of a common thing. I know for myself, because it was years and years and years, like a long time ago. But you're right. Like it can be such a casual conversation but it's also like kind of jarring if you sit down and you really think about that for a second. So I think that's really important that you said that. So thank you for sharing that. That was really,
Did you find
really
it cathartic to tell your story, or was it I like very difficult for you, or both?
I literally just had this conversation with my husband before I got down here to record with you. I literally just said to him, being a silence breaker in three different ways, being a silence breaker against my alma mater, and then two very well-known true crime podcasters, and being featured in Rolling Stone, I carried so much anxiety. And when I woke up this morning, because the episode released yesterday, I thought to myself, I am starting to heal. That was actually very cathartic. And I could never verbalize what happened to me because I think I felt that shame. And now by doing this podcast and sitting down with trauma survivors on top of doing, my work as a producer, it finally taught me that I might actually get through this if I start speaking it and I speak my truth. So you're right. It is cathartic. It is, I feel less alone. I finally feel less alone. So yeah, thank you for asking that. I'm like, now I can see your background.
No, but yeah, that's it. And, I think for me, having grown up the way that I did, my mom comes from a big Catholic family, lots of trauma, and I always wanted to be a trauma breaker. And what I learned growing up was really not to keep secrets. And I firmly don't believe in secrets at all. I actually have debates with my friends where they're like, so-and-so said something behind so-and-so. I'm like, one thing you have to know about me is I don't believe in secrets.
I love this.
I don't. And I actually had this whole philosophy debate with my husband and one of our close friends where I was like going through all the ethics of keeping secrets. And I was like, I just believe they are toxic for the person who keeps them, toxic for the person who won't say the truth. Like, I just don't believe them. So you just telling me it almost gave me chills, because that goes back to the core of like why I do this work, because I think there's so much shame in being 16 and pregnant. But when we made that show, teen pregnancy hit the lowest it's ever been, because girls were really watching that show and they really were like, holy crap, that would be my life.
It's true. I mean, that was the reason. I think that was the reason I was so drawn to it, because it was like, now I can actually see it rather than, people preaching it to you and, hey, don't have sex and all of that culture of growing up with it. So actually seeing it, I'll give the example of like Farrah. I think Farrah was like a cheerleader. And then so like watching her story and then her migrate over into, Teen Mom, but it was kind of alarming too to say there are adequate issues, obviously, but being able to identify it was huge. And it is no shock to me that the rate of that dropped over the course of that time. That was a very, very groundbreaking show, in my honest opinion.
Yeah. So. Yeah. And I mean, like, I didn't work on the show at this time, but even with Farrah's story, she talked about this in her book. So it's like common knowledge that I believe she wanted to get an abortion, and because of her state laws, she was under 18. Her mom had to agree, like sign a waiver, and her mom wouldn't sign it. So she was forced to go through with the pregnancy, which is just a side story. But even on Teen Mom, this is again prior to me working on it. Amber Portwood had an assault charge for her child's father. That was a very difficult situation, I think, to navigate. And I think, again, early days of reality TV, not knowing all the boundaries, not knowing all the, ethics or what should be done. I mean, I think it was a powerful story to tell, because at the end of the day, you get pregnant at 16, you may have underlying mental health issues. Maybe you don't, you have trauma, adding a young child into it, you have a relationship that's unstable. Domestic violence is extremely prevalent in those kind of situations.
Correct. Yes.
So to me, I'm like, this is where the ethical conversation always gets so difficult for me, because I do believe in real documentary TV filmmaking is that you turn the camera on and you see what happens. When to step in is a difficult conversation, but at the same time, like, aren't all these stories important? Like, I don't know. Like, when do we say this is too much?
Yeah.
I don't know.
I see what you're saying. Right. Yeah.
I think the boundary is really the person and the person's story. And like you said, do you think you could have told your story 5 years ago?
I started telling my story 5 years ago, and it was kind of like breadcrumbing it. It was, okay, I can start saying this, I can say this, but I think everything kind of changed by the time that I shared my stories with a massive publication like Rolling Stone, because then people started nitpicking my story and started saying that I was dramatic. I am making nothing out of something. And I think finally being able to share my actual story from start to finish, it finally gives that context to people of why, though, it maybe wasn't the most extreme assault, but it's going to help people understand what was going on in my mind. And also being a DV survivor, I have never verbally have said that up until this week. And sharing the time that I thought my life was in danger. Um, so giving, 5 years ago, this was also still in the early years of Me Too, which absolutely helped, like get me to where I'm at today. But you're right. Like it is, it's so hard to do, but I know at the end of the day it's going to help somebody. And I firmly believe the show, like Teen Mom, I mean, I would give the example of Macy as well, and watching, the struggles that she had with her son's father as well. And just like you said, at what point is too much, or how much you're showing? But I think, it was so raw, and that's the hard reality of it, of like reality TV. But, I think people now kind of compare those shows to each other, like Real Housewives. But I mean, look at Secret Lives of Mormon Wives. Look how much that has opened up such a bigger conversation, especially me being local here in Utah. It is really just kind of reshaping the narrative, if you will. But I mean, that's I see the two things balancing in that series as well. And so I appreciate you giving this context, because I think people will probably, see 16 and Pregnant or Teen Mom in this write-up of this episode. But when they actually hear you breaking this down and talking about it, I really hope people kind of look at it in a totally different light. So thank you for that.
Yeah. And I think something you touched on, which I do want to know. I do want to know, living in Utah, if all of the women do really have those hair extensions that they all have and they all look alike. But
That part's
on a more
correct.
serious note, yeah, I think something you touched on in your story is nuance, right?
Yeah.
That in that article they didn't tell the full scope of the picture, and it wasn't really
Hmm.
in your words, and so it really reduced it to sort of a black and white picture that you had to like add a lot of context to. And I think for me as a true crime producer, especially developing my own projects now, I really want, like when you were talking about the future of true crime, I don't know what it is, but what I would like it to be, what I'm crafting my stories to be, is in that gray area, because
Mm.
we are not black and white people. We are
Yes.
not a villain and, you know, a victim, right?
Hmm. Hmm.
Because victims have their own agency,
Yes.
villains have their own stories. I think the amount of, sexual, a lot of sexual assault happens to then what becomes rapists. That's, worth telling, because there are reasons, as in the same way that victims can be messy, and that's
Yeah.
okay. And
Yes.
actually I think there's a great book by John Krakow called, I think it's called Missoula, Montana. It takes place in Missoula, Montana, and it talks about a lot of the sexual assaults that happened there, and it was just very well written. Talks a lot about the prosecutor in Montana who also was a victim of sexual assault and has
Mm.
since had different thoughts on it, and maybe a bit of an apologizer now. And that makes sense to me too, because when
Yes.
you're a
Yeah.
victim, you don't want to be seen as a victim. So
Correct.
what do you want to do? Like, and that's why I'm like, the true story, the interesting stories are in the gray area.
That's
um
fair. Yeah.
I don't think that, we have to tell a story, with a perfect victim. I think with missing persons cases, it's sort of the same way in that, we dealt with a lot of stories of young men that were right out of college or in college, really struggling. Jason Landry out of Luling, Texas, he's still missing. Daniel Robinson in Arizona, and then this more recent season, Alex Gum, who went to Kauai, and they were all searching and really struggling with the meaning of life at a young age. And I think this generation of young men are the loneliest
Mm,
generation we've maybe ever seen, dealing with a lot of different emotions and not knowing the outlets for those emotions in the same way that even women maybe. And it's very easy to tell that story and just be like, this was a perfect college kid who did the perfect thing and one day it disappeared, right? But
right.
that's not who this person was. Like, we are
Mm,
not perfect people. We all have complicated stories, complicated emotions, complicated struggles that we're going through, complicated struggles that we are going through that 99% of the people we interact with won't know anything about.
yes, exactly. Exactly.
So, I mean, it harms me to hear, that you were at all victim blamed or picked apart. I think
Yeah.
that's very unfair, especially as you're trying to process, trying to get this cathartic experience.
Yeah.
So my hope is in the future is really to be able to tell fuller stories
I
and
love
not
that.
just go to these sound bites, not just you know, and I mean, I think you see the success of that in audiences too. I think Quiet on the
Hmm.
Set did it quite well. I think Drake Bell not only told his story, but also I think they were able to show how that story affected some of the actions he's doing more recently.
Yeah.
That obviously made, bad headlines, but I think that context was so important. And I mean, giving him a whole real episode to tell that story, I think added to it as well.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
because they could have just put him in a section and made it two
Moved on.
episodes.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's like the biggest true crime series of the last 2 years, really.
Yeah. One of the things that you brought up to me though when we first connected, and I know you highlighted some of these individuals, but you were very one of the first things you said to me was, I want to talk about some cases that need more light. Can you talk to me a little bit more about those? I know you mentioned these three individuals,
Yeah,
but
there's
can you
there's
share?
so there's so many of them, but
Yeah.
I made some notes on the ones I definitely want to talk about. We did 2 seasons of Disappeared, season 10 and 11. It's streaming on Max, so I would urge anyone who's listening to this to watch it. You
Please
never
watch.
know. Yeah, and every episode has a number that you can call with tips, their photos. So you never know. I mean, Gabby Petito was basically found because someone on TikTok saw their random truck at a random campsite that wasn't even
Exactly.
an
Right.
organized campsite in Grand Teton. So you never know what you may um have seen and not even know.
Yeah.
Last there's a girl, Kristen Brueggemann, who went missing in Indianapolis, Indiana. She was leaving a bar late at night. She's been missing for many years. There's been some tips, but nothing conclusive. I really hope you could watch her episode. Nathaniel Holmes went missing out of Westminster, Colorado.
Mm,
He was struggling with some mental health issues, being a young adult. Um, and he walked away from school, and his parents have not seen him since.
mm,
There's a good chance that he could be living in the homeless population, either in California or elsewhere. Um, he was only 17, I believe, when he went missing, but his family has been looking for him ever since, and I would really love to see closure in that case. Also, Devontae Morgan. He went missing in Mount Shasta, California. He was from San Francisco. He happened to be visiting Mount Shasta, California. He was spotted on some surveillance cameras in downtown. And his family, went up to Mount Shasta. They turned over a lot of rocks, disturbed some of the local population. I think the local population really wants to see a conclusion to that case and justice for their loved ones. And I know it's torn the town apart, the family apart. So Devontae Morgan, if anyone recognizes that name, watch the episode. But there's so many more.
Right.
We were so honored in season 10. We covered Deanne Warner's case. Her body was recently found on her property, which was searched many times. Her husband has now been charged with her murder. It's another case of, community really torn apart, family really torn apart. But I'm hopeful now there'll be a conclusion.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I mean, there's been fascinating cases over the many, many years have disappeared, many that I was not involved in. And you never know the ending of these cases. But these families who are desperate for answers, like, I can't imagine living in their lives. So anything that you can do, follow them on Facebook. There's some updates and stuff. Also say Sheena Gibbs out of Chicago, Christopher Hoy, went missing in Minnesota. His case hasn't gotten a lot of attention. So yeah, I'm really
we'll put up some of their pictures and their missing information as well. We'll definitely put that on there. Yeah. Thank you.
Definitely.
For that. All right, Jenny, I know we've talked a lot about like some heavy stuff, but we're going to transition to a little bit lighter, if that's okay with you.
Oh, that's great. I like to laugh. I like in true crime when we can laugh.
Exactly. So here is my getting to know Jenny questions. What is the most interesting thing you have read or watched recently?
Oh, gosh. I'm watching a lot of maybe bad TV. We started watching West Wing from the beginning, and that feels like it's going to take me the next 10 years of my life. But I did American Nightmare was the best doc I've seen in a really long time. I don't consume a lot of docs anymore because they're becoming very overwhelming, and working on my own projects, it gets
it's hard to I'm with you. Yeah. I mean, I've got my project too, and you're right. Like sometimes it's just like overload and you're like, I can't.
and I have like so many people texting me like, watch this, watch that. I'm like, I don't have time for all of this. But yeah, I mean, we did talk about Hotel Cecile, but I love Joe Berlinger's work. He did a great show a long time ago on Auction called I think it was called The Forgotten Women of Ohio. And it was basically about this, unsolved potential case of, women who are working as prostitutes in Ohio, and that they had gone missing and suspected a serial killer, but maybe not. And I actually thought it was just really well made because it didn't really just tell the story about, it really told a nuanced picture of what was going on in this community and with these women, and really honored their story in a way of not reducing them just to, sex workers, but really showing the humanity and the situation and how drugs played a part into it and the community being torn apart. So I really like stories like that. I think the Long Island, there's a great book about the Long Island serial killer.
Yeah.
Yeah. And now, I mean, there's going to be 100 more
so much coming out.
Yes, no one covered that case. No one covered that case. I mean, they could have caught this guy like 10 years ago. So that's a little depressing, but hit me with the next question.
Yeah.
So, I took that one serious too.
No, these are such great answers, and Joe's a great guy. I we bonded in my early years of starting my Bundy project. So he is a good person. He has a good heart, and I'm glad to hear you shout him out for that project. That's nice. Yeah. Okay. So you are in Los Angeles, yes?
Yes, I was a New Yorker for 14 years, so I feel like I'm de-New Yorkering myself. Like this is the first year when I've been like, it's been 4 years. I need to
Yeah.
stop telling everyone I'm a New Yorker. I live in Los Angeles.
Well, then I'm going to make this special for you because I love this question. So I make everyone shout out a local restaurant, shop, bookstores. Do a shout out for LA and New York.
Oh gosh, this is kind of hard because I don't really leave my house that much, to be frank.
Who do you DoorDash?
Okay. I'm gonna shout out Sweet Rose in Brentwood because I plan on going there after this to get ice cream. Also because I am dying to run into Ben Affleck there and find out why he broke up with J-Lo, and I know he goes there. So I will shout out that.
Yeah.
And then in New York, oh gosh, there's actually a lot of places in New York that I miss. I miss like my Indian food place. I miss my Thai food place. Now all the names are not coming to me. I miss Sweet Afton. I lived in Astoria for most of my time that I lived in New York. So I miss my like local haunts like Sweet Afton and hopping around and stuff.
Yeah. Oh, I love this.
I'm not a foodie though. I'm not like a real foodie.
That's okay, truly. But I'm just happy that you're going to get ice cream after this because that sounds amazing. All right. Last question. Who are some of your heroes and how have they inspired you? And this doesn't have to be like work related too. This can be however you interpret that question.
Oh gosh. Okay. This answer, I'll try to keep it short then. Very inspired by Gloria Steinem. I loved, learning about Ms. Magazine, the path that she paved for herself. I just think I want to be the type of person that does a little bit of everything. I don't ever want to be like, I'm just television producer. And I'm learning that more now, especially with this, the industry becoming more down. I'm like, okay, I need 10 jobs now. And I'm fine with that. Yeah, she's definitely a hero. I want to again shout out Lori Layton, who got me into true crime. I wouldn't even be on this podcast talking to you at all right now if it wasn't for her believing me. Yeah, Joe Berlinger is actually definitely a hero of mine because, they always ask you, what kind of filmmaker do you want to be? Who do you admire?
Right.
And I was never good at that question. I remember when I was interviewing at Target and I said, oh, I want to be a filmmaker. And the guy said, oh yeah, like what kind of movies do you like? And I just panicked and was like, Steven Spielberg. Steven Spielberg.
Which is that's not a horrible answer, but
and then the guy was like, oh, I love Steven Spielberg. And then he gave me the best job in Target, just like working in the DVD section. And all I had to do was like fill DVDs. And all the other guys that I started with was like, how did you get this job at the DVD section? And I was like, Steven, thanks, Steven Spielberg. So I guess shout out to Steven Spielberg, who I also do admire. Yeah, and then just like a lot of women that mentored me. B Mascaro, who was my producer on Teen Mom. She gave me a lot of chances that I wouldn't have had. Yeah, all the producers I worked with on I want to work for Diddy season 2, who may or may not be subpoenaed in the near future. And I admire you. I admire you just from meeting you. I mean, you telling your story and starting this podcast is freaking amazing.
Thank you. Yeah. It feels it's taking its time to build up, but what I love is just hearing all the different answers and hearing your experience because I know as I'm still pretty amateur I mean it's been 7 years since I've been in this true crime industry, but what I love is that you are providing so much more context in terms of storytelling. And so I appreciate you just reaching out to me to say, hey, I would like to talk on this podcast. So
kudos to you for doing that, first of all. But second, I mean, truly hearing how much you care about this work and caring about these people, hearing you talk about the cases that are sticking with you from Disappeared. Like I said, that was something that really stuck out to me because you led with that. You said, I really want to make sure that I highlight these cases, and we do need more producers like you in this world. And I'm so happy to hear that you are working on your own projects. And I cannot wait to see how those come together, because it sounds like we have similar visions and ideologies in terms of storytelling. And you're right. A lot of it is gray, and we miss so much information when, we produce shows like the shows we produce, but they are ordered in in a specific fashion, and we do what we got to do to get that out there. But at the end of the day, I think there is a rewarding aspect of being an independent filmmaker and storyteller. So I applaud you for taking this on, and I truly cannot wait to see what you come up with. So
yeah, definitely. And if anyone out there has a story that they want to tell, I respond to all emails.
I will make sure we put some of your contact information in there. But oh my goodness, Jenny, thank you so much for doing this. And like I said, I appreciate everything that you're doing and advocating for those who, those stories need to be amplified, and you're doing the damn thing. So thank you so much for everything.
Thank you for having me. And I love this podcast, and I think you're doing great work. And I think this is only the beginning. Really.
Thank you. Oh, thank you so much, Jenny.
Be sure to tune in next week when I sit down with Pebbles Sarmiento, a courageous cult survivor of the Tony Alamo Christian Ministries and a former child bride. While Pebbles has bravely shared her story in the media, this time we focus on the remarkable woman she is today. Through her journey, she has transformed trauma into hope, inspiring countless fellow survivors. Don't miss this powerful conversation filled with resilience and insights on what it truly means to be a survivor. This is True Crime in Hollywood, a personal tale. Thank you for listening. And as always, remember the victims and embrace the survivors.